Welcome to episode 7 of Super States Practices of Transformation with me, your host, Joshua Peters. If you, like me, find yourself fascinated with this idea of using trance states to grow your personal or professional life, whether that's hypnosis or psychedelics or breath work or sexuality or any other type of trance state, you're listening to the right podcast. This week, I talk with Chrissy Marie. Chrissy is an embodiment guide and a breathwork facilitator, and she's about to teach us about the wisdom in wonder. Stay tuned, wisdom and wonder through breathwork with Chrissy Marie. Welcome to Super States. I am really excited to be here today with Chrissy Marie. Chrissy is an embodiment guide, a breathwork facilitator, and an all-around wonderful human being. Welcome to the show, Chrissy.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here and to share.
I'm excited to hear your ideas and how you like to work with people. So, Chrissy, my first question is usually something like describing what you can do. So, what is it that you do as an
Yep.
embodiment guide, as a breathwork facilitator, and how does this transform people's lives?
Yeah, that's a big question. I will see if we can boil it down to the Spark Notes version. But essentially, at the essence of what I do is I help people plug back into a sense of aliveness, of being alive. And that is through different modalities, a lot of nervous system recalibration. So, teaching people about how their nervous system works, how they can be with it in a way where they can feel safe in flow states and super states, and especially in states of play. I love working with parts. I do a lot of parts work. So, I love like inner child work, archetypal work. And I primarily work with like thought leaders, high achievers, other wellness practitioners who are feeling like they can't enjoy their like they're just not connected to their work anymore. They're overworked, they're burnt out, or they're feeling some imposter syndrome. And I help them move through that back into a space of feeling really like lit up about what they're doing.
Yeah, I like that, and I follow you on the social medias. And one of the things that I really like about what I see you doing is you will sometimes post these videos of you just dancing
Hmm.
and and feeling joy. And those are really inspiring. Just, I'm sure you probably get this, but just to let you know, they're really inspiring to see, and that sense of play that you're talking about, very important to living a powerful embodied life.
Mm. I love that. That's how it's received. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Chrissy, how did you find yourself here? Like, what was your journey to get to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, I've always been very curious. Curiosity is like the undertone of my, I'd say, my essence. And always curious about connection and communication and how to make that, how to deepen that and how to become more masterful in that so that I could have the relationships that I was craving that I didn't get to have as a child. And so that journey, I just kept following my curiosity and putting myself in containers or in spaces where it felt a little edgy, like where I knew that I would be stretched, but I also felt called into those spaces, like leadership courses, masterminds, different. We can talk about different types of super state scenarios,
Yeah.
and I built a sense of self trust in my capacity to hold space for the full spectrum of my humanity, which I didn't have growing up. I didn't have a lot of resources around how to manage big sensations in my body. And the more I learned, the more I shared. I knew that I wanted to work in some sort of small group or one on one capacity with people. So I did get a master's in clinical social work. And then I've just continued to self study and gather other certifications in different modalities so that I can, meet people wherever they're at and help them experience that sense of self trust as well.
That's quite a journey from social work to where you are now.
Yeah, and I still do I still do traditional therapy. And I'm air quoting traditional because I still bring breath work and energy work and everything into therapy when clients are open to receiving that. But yeah, it's a mix of this using my degree, and then also 5 years ago I went off and started to run my own business and work for myself and take private clients on. And so yeah, I do a little bit of everything.
So, what would you say has fundamentally changed about how you work with clients from when you first started until now?
I prepare way less. When I first started, I took on this belief via academia that knowledge equaled credibility and it equaled competence. And now what I realize is that presence and my capacity to self-regulate is actually what makes my sessions with people so potent.
Yeah,
And instead of going in with an agenda of what they need and how, I might look good in a session based on what I know and what I can bring, I trust the process way more. And I'm much more masterful in helping clients guide the session, by being very intentional and diving deep into their own inner wisdom.
yeah. I think that's a pretty common. That's my experience too. Is at first you're like, okay, here we're gonna do these things, and you're gonna have results, and but eventually you get to that point where they're giving you what they want. All you have to do is listen, be
Yeah.
present, and be there holding that space with them.
Hmm. Totally. And so many people who come to me have not had the experience of being with somebody who isn't trying to fix them in a helping container. Somebody who's just at the essence of what I do now is the energy of allowing and teaching people how to allow whatever is arising for
Mm,
them and recognizing and beginning to trust in the organic alchemy that occurs when you allow whatever arises. And a lot of people are like, wow, I've never done that, and it's so simple, and they're, like, surprised how quickly they can move through things when they're not trying to move through things.
yeah, or stop it from happening.
Exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned that you do a lot of self learning. How do you do self education? Like, what is it? Where are your go to sources?
Yeah. Well, that's changed too. Initially, I was investing in membership programs and masterminds and small group coaching and business coaching, and so, yeah, I've invested a lot of time and money into having support, like professional support systems. And I still very much value that. Obviously, it's what I do. So I value investing in other people. And right now, a lot of where I'm at is like integration space. It's putting everything I've learned into practice. And I continue to find that when I take myself through like a breathwork journey, or I sit with myself and I sound, or I do journaling, or I just have a conversation with myself, I learn a lot from turning inward
Yeah,
and recognizing more and more that the next best step is like a conscious conversation away with myself.
as they say, we have all the answers and all the resources that we need.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When you're using so you use breath work, you're using embodying, helping people embody these kinds of experiences. How are you utilizing different states of consciousness to help them to do that?
So sometimes I'll use breath work with clients where I'll teach them certain breath patterns and how to use the breath to alter the state and to slip into a deeper space of allowing. That's the primary way that I support people specifically in an altered state.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes people experience altered states, and when I guess maybe to bring some context in, states that are different from their autopilot, from their day to day, like
Right.
presence sometimes feels like an altered state, where it's like,
Absolutely, yeah.
wow, I'm in my life. Oh my gosh. So bringing people back to presence, I do a lot of mindfulness work. Like if I'm not taking them into a breath pattern, I'm just asking them to say hello to their breath and hello to their body and just
Yeah,
noticing what's happening in the moment. So it's a lot of that first and foremost as people build a body of resilience and comfortability with doing that. And then taking them a little bit deeper.
great. Where did you get introduced to breath work?
I got introduced to breathwork in a, I think it was a second weekend workshop called The Bridge Method with Preston Smiles and Alexi Panos. They're a beautiful married couple that do absolutely phenomenal transformation work. And it was about 4 years ago, I think, 4 or 5 years ago that I went. And they guided breath work, and it just like blew my mind.
Hmm.
I had such a powerful experience of energy moving through me, and it was the first time I'd had the experience of an altered state without any sort of like plant medicine or substance use. And I was blown away that I could feel what I was feeling just by using my breath. And right after that, I was like, I have to teach this. I have to learn. I have to share this with more people. So I got certified to guide people through breath work.
And did you get certified in the bridge method?
No, I took a separate course outside of that.
What was your certification in breath work?
Certification to teach like groups and individuals. It was through, I think his name is John Paul Crimmy has an online teaching,
Mhm.
but there's so many. And if people are interested, I would recommend a trauma informed training. This particular one was not.
Okay,
I have a trauma informed background from the work
sure.
I do. But as I took the training, I was like, I think there could be some more things said here.
Yeah. And are there certain methods that you have found are trauma informed?
I haven't gone out of my way to look for other particular
Okay.
certifications just because I have the background, but um, at the essence, lots of choice. So learning how to pre-frame breath work for people so that they feel like they can slow down if they need to, that they can move and back out if they need to. Learning how to kind of look for people who might be overly activated and support them during that. But yeah, there are trauma informed trainings out there, and I can certainly give you some. I have a few that I just don't know off the top of my head that I could leave with the audience if anybody's
Sure.
curious.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with breath work, having gone through, I believe it was a version of rebirthing
Yeah.
that I did with a couple, probably 5 times, 5 different times, a
Mm,
few years ago, and that was my first introduction to breath work. And same
wow.
same experience as you. Like, it was amazing how powerful using just the breath can be to change your state.
Right. Yeah. Unbelievable.
So what do you think is something that other breathwork facilitators should either start or stop doing?
I would say definitely start um, offering people choice in breathwork. But and again, by that I mean you can go faster if you want, you can go slower if you want. You don't have to follow this particular pace. And being very clear about what can happen as you start to change your state and what that might feel like and what that might bring up and ways of being with that as things start to shift. Because I remember I had never felt the way I felt when before I did
Hmm.
the breath work, and things were happening to my body where my body was like moving off the floor and twitching, and my chest was popping up off the floor, and I at first resisted that movement. I was like, "Whoa, I don't know about that." And eventually I let it happen, and it was really lovely, but I think I was only able to allow it to happen because I'd been in other altered states before, and I had a specific mantra that I was using for myself to help me feel safe. And so creating safety within those containers for breathwork is important, and safety stems from having a lot of choice and different ways of being with what's arising, so that, if you do feel like you're on an edge and you're nervous, you can pull back. So I think that's really important to have that there. I haven't experienced breathwork with a lot of other different facilitators. So, to be honest, I don't have too much feedback, but what I do enjoy, what I have liked from other facilitators is that choice, is gentle guidance
Hmm.
as, I'm participating in the breathing. And I've never had a bad experience with breath work. I've had some neutral experiences with
Yeah.
breath work. And I think reminding people that with altered states, every single time you drop into something like that, it's going to be different. So
Hmm.
releasing expectations, I really love a pre-frame around release whatever expectations you have for this journey.
Yeah.
And a facilitator who wasn't doing breath work, she was guiding a shamanic journey. She said something to the nature of, um, expect nothing but be open to miracles, something like that. And
Sure.
I really
Yeah.
loved that.
I like to frame what I do with people when they come like, you probably have an expectation about what is about to happen, and it's
Yeah.
almost entirely wrong.
Yeah.
So why don't you just leave that off to the side and just let this be whatever it's going to be for you?
Yes. Yes. Exactly that, right? Yeah. And inviting people to have an intention, but then to let the intention go and to trust that they're going to get whatever it is that they need.
Hmm.
Yeah. I like to set that as plant that as a seed.
Yeah,
You're always getting what you need.
that's a great frame to go into any kind of situation, like
Any
really any
kind.
kind of
Yeah.
life moment.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
I I think that's really a beautiful idea to be more gentle with the breath work is because as I think back to that process that I did, it was very regimented. It's like you breathe like this, and if you slow down, they'll remind you to
Yeah.
speed back up again, get back to the rhythm.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard. Now there's a balance to that, right? Because some
Yeah.
of it is a little bit of pushing through what's uncomfortable
Yep.
to get to that transformative moment. But
Yep.
then there's also, okay, we've got there now. Now you can kind of play with it a little bit because now the energy is flowing through you, and
Right.
I notice when I get to the end of a breathwork session, it's like I don't even really need to breathe.
Yeah, you're just so full of
I
air.
just sit there, lay there, and just I don't. Do
Yeah.
I even need to breathe?
Yeah.
I think I might need to eventually.
Yeah. I could just exist for a while.
Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
think is the most misunderstood thing about breathwork?
Ah. Well, a lot of people don't understand why you would sit and consciously breathe. You're like, "Well, we do that anyways, right?" So
Right.
people just don't understand the science around actively breathing, for extended periods of time. I think that's the most common thing I get is there's no reference point for it, and they don't understand it. Some people come in afraid as well. They're like,
Hmm.
"Oh gosh, am I going to be able to handle this?" So that's where choice comes in. Um, a lot of times I'll get, "Oh, yeah, like yoga, like breathe like alternate nostril breathing or things like that." And I think what people don't understand is there's a lot of diversity in breath work. There's a lot
Yeah.
of different ways that you can alter your state. You can use different methods, different patterns, open mouth, closed mouth, all, right? And so I that's another thing that I do a little bit differently is I was trained in a very specific technique, and I share the technique with people, but then I also give them like two other ways that they could breathe. And I tell people, I'm like, if you don't like this way, if this is uncomfortable for your back or your chest or your neck, try this or this or this. Have
Right.
a play with all three or four techniques. I don't always use the technique I was trained in. Sometimes I just do something else. So, yeah, I am very flexible. And I think sometimes maybe there's an expectation that you have to follow the technique. I get a lot of type A overachievers come in and they're like, am I doing this right?
Yeah, right.
Am I checking the boxes? Am I getting what I came for? And it's
Do I
like,
get the
yes,
gold star?
right. Am I the best breathwork participant? Yes, 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 and yes, So then we're back at what are your expectations and how can we drop them?
Yeah, yeah, I love it. As you're as you go through your journey, who do you look up to? Who's your role model, or do you have a mentor?
Yeah, so right now I'm in different containers, mostly creative containers around writing and sharing your story and things of that nature. There's nobody that like constantly follow. Right now, again, going back to what I spoke to earlier, I look up to my higher self. Like, like
Hmm.
I really trust there's a version of me that just knows um, what she needs. And but there's been so many people along the way. I couldn't name them all. I will say that I'll just share some of my favorite books and things that
Yeah,
I've been
yeah,
learning from right now. So Atomic Habits is one of my favorite books. I use
absolutely.
that a lot with clients, the science of behavior change and how to embrace small shifts. And a lot of my work has been shifting into teachings around what I'm calling tiny moments in life where there's magic happening that maybe we brush over because we're focused on a different timeline, or tiny shifts that we're having in terms of are we integrating confidence, courage, connection that we easily can brush past because we're looking for the big moments, the big breakthrough, ugly crying transformation, or the
Yeah.
huge insight. We miss all the little moments of magic, wonder, and wisdom. So that book has been really supportive, along with Cal Newport wrote two books called Digital Minimalism and Deep Work. And
Mm.
those are books about more spacious, intentional living away from technology. And I'm loving that as well.
Those are fantastic. I'll make sure to link to all of those books in the show
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah. But
So,
there's been so many.
I mean, I have a stack of books that
Yeah.
that I still have yet to read, and same as you. Like, there's so many people that you glean little, like even just watching you do your dancing, right? That's a moment. That's
Yeah.
a piece of inspiration that can help people find that childlike sense of wonder for
Mhm.
those tiny moments that
Yeah.
show up in life.
Yep.
Stop and smell the roses, as they say.
Yes. Yes.
So, based on all of your experiences, can you give us a practical way that someone can use a super state that you gain from breath work to improve something in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if I'm going to use breath work to support me, I will usually go in with an intention. Sometimes that intention is show me what I need to know, right? Or show me an integration, something practical that I can do to support this goal that I have or this intention that I have. And yeah, and then I'll take myself through a short session. And I like to ask at the end, what do I need to know right now? That's one of my favorite questions to ask clients uh, or myself is what do I need to hear or what do I need to remember right now? And trusting the simplicity of the answer. And usually a breathwork session will lead me to some sort of inspired action. I'll usually get a hit around like, oh, message this person or do this thing or take yourself through this tiny ritual. So I usually leave with something that I can go out and do to create more momentum and sustain whatever
Yeah,
feeling I experienced during that state.
an actionable item.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
I'm
it.
all about that, right? Somebody called me an integration artist once, and I loved that because we can jump from state to state. Sometimes I see a lot of people chasing states, and I think what's important is to recognize like there's magic in between the super states as well, and also there's wisdom that needs to be integrated from those super states, and it's important that we're actively shifting the way we be in the world so that we're not just like waiting for the next super state.
Right.
experience.
Kind of like chasing the next high, right?
Chasing the next high,
Yeah.
right? Finding the tiny little hits in between instead.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Are there any risks that you people need to know about using breath work? And if so, how can they lower those?
Yeah, there's some contraindications. Usually, if you have a heart condition, if you have a history of seizures, if you're going through if you have like a lot of medication management happening, or you're going through like a really difficult emotional time, then it's advised that you don't engage in breath work to the extent that you go into an altered state.
Hmm.
You can still utilize your breath consciously by paying attention to it, by slowing it down or deepening it. But yeah, those are the contraindications. Also, pregnancy, they say with any of these that I'm mentioning, just talk to your doctor about that, and also do some research into like holotropic breath work or conscious connected breathing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but it's very, very safe. It's very, very safe. And you're in control the whole time. So as you're doing the breath work, if at any point you feel like you're out of your depth, you can slow it down. And
Yeah.
I always recommend though doing it with somebody who teaches and who can guide you and support you through any new and interesting things that might arise for you.
And is breath work something that can be done online?
Yeah. So I mostly only do it online. I have a membership where I do a breathwork session every month and a masterclass that goes along with it. And people sometimes join live, or sometimes people will jump on the replays. So yeah, you can do it anytime, anywhere. Maybe not while driving, but yeah, a lot of people love the online membership situation because you can just do it privately from like the comfort of your bed,
Sure.
or your backyard or things like that.
That's great. How do you imagine the future of using these types of altered states like breath work or plant medicines or whatever for creating personal growth? What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is seeing people who I wouldn't expect to be curious about it come in,
Yeah.
especially when I was down in Alabama for a little while. I was in a military town, had some military men come in and do breath work, people who were a little skeptical or wary, and then had some really beautiful heart opening experiences. But yeah, I think it's becoming more and more recognizable. People are talking about it more. I know Wim Hof has kind of made breathwork a big
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is more in the mainstream now, and I think that's really exciting. And I think that's why the conversation around making sure it's trauma informed and that there's clear and safe and credible practitioners setting up these containers is really important. But yeah, I feel very hopeful. I feel very hopeful. I'm an optimist, but yeah. I think it's just going to continue, especially with social media. I think it's going to continue to pique people's interests.
Yeah. I mean, it's just fascinating how the breath, which is one of well, I think it might be the only unconscious behavior that we actually have conscious control over, right? We can't
Yeah.
control our heart rate, our
Right.
body temperature, but we can control our breath.
Yes.
Or can't control digestion, right? But this
Right.
is like one of those things that we can control.
Yeah, and one of the things I found fascinating is that the central nervous system and the pathways in our body that control our stress response are 80% of those pathways stem from the body up to the brain, whereas 20 stem from the brain down. So sometimes you might hear people talk about a bottom up approach versus a top down approach. And a bottom up approach is extremely effective because you've got 80% of these like when we can control our body, basically, when we can control our physiological response using
Hmm.
breath,
Hmm.
we have a much higher capacity or chance to be able to influence our stress response than just using mantra or talk therapy or thought pivots alone.
Yeah.
Moving from a more physiological perspective is really, really, really effective.
Yeah, but rather than just push through or
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
of those other, uh, even meditating, right? That's again focusing on the mind. But I think it does bring in breath because a lot of times we're focusing on our breath when we're meditating.
Totally, totally. And as somebody with like I'd been diagnosed with ADHD, I've always had a harder time sitting still with for meditation,
Hmm.
and I found breath work to be uh, a better fit for me when it comes to some sort of mindfulness
Hmm.
activity because it is more active. It's a more active, like, whoo, okay, I'm moving. There's something to focus on, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I found that for a lot of my more neurodivergent clients, they enjoy that more than just a sit still and breathe regularly type of thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Chrissy, if somebody wants to learn more about you, how can they be in touch?
So they can find me. My website is called theartofaliveness.com. And I also have a podcast on Spotify and iTunes called The Art of Aliveness. So they can find me on either of those spaces, or they can find me on social media. I can drop links in. My Instagram is at Come Alive with Chrissy. And then I can drop my Facebook stuff in there too.
Yeah, great. I'll make sure that all that stuff is in the show notes for those that are interested. And
Yay.
then what is the one insight that you want this audience to leave with today?
So it's one of my favorite quotes is I think it's by Socrates. It's wisdom begins in wonder. And I'm a big fan of wonder and curiosity and kind of going back to dropping expectations and meeting life with a beginner's mind. And I found that that particular attitude going into any sort of altered state, super state, is so empowering, is so powerful. That childlike curiosity, and anybody can get there. I have found it, with play or altered states, like no matter what your background is, no matter if you believe that you can or not, I've always found that anybody can access play, wonder, um, a super state. So yeah, that's that wisdom begins in wonder piece is really really special for me.
I love that. That's really uh, brings back the dancing again, right? Just
Yeah.
that stop it and smell the roses, be present, have that childlike sense of wonder.
Yeah, it's everything.
Well, thank you so much, Chrissy, for joining us today. Really appreciate your energy and how you show up and all the content that you do put out into the world.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
If you can hear my voice now, that means you stuck around for the entire show. Thank you so much for supporting this show and our guests. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts because that's really the best way to expand this message. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast through your favorite platform, or you can subscribe on YouTube where this podcast is in video format. That way you'll stay up to date with super states. Also, let me know what topics you're interested in or the guests that you'd like me to interview in future episodes. You can get in touch with the comments. You can also find me on most of the social medias out there at Joshua Ray Peters. Don't be shy. I will answer your comments. I'll see you all next week. Remember, you carry the seeds of change inside of you. Stay flexible, keep growing, and embrace your transformation.